Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fostering Research Integrity Guest Speaker Series. My name is Sean Lacey. I'm the Munster Technological University's Research Integrity and Compliance Officer. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Professor Vasiliki Petousi from the University of Crete, who is the first of our three speakers as part of this guest speaker series that we have. I'm just going to do a very brief introduction of Professor Petousi, and then I'll hand over. So Professor Petousi's research and teaching interests include sociology of law, criminology and deviance, bioethics, research integrity, research misconduct, and research ethics, along with sociology of gender and feminist theory. Currently, and for many years, Professor Petousi has served as a chair, vice chair, and member of research ethics committees in various academic research institutions, and is an independent ethics reviewer for the European Commission since 2010. She has also served as an ethics advisor for funded research projects. And today, Professor Petousi is here to speak to us on why care about research misconduct, accounts of scientists on its causes and impact. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the very kind and interesting, and very kind invitation in this very interesting series. Yes, I have dealt with ethics for a very long time in my academic work. And what I'm going to be talking to you about today are a little bits and pieces of a project, of the findings of a project that we undertook some years ago, and with which we had much fun. So excuse me if I'm overexcited about it, or if I present more than can be handled. Okay, so I'm gonna just start by sharing my screen with you and try to go over what we have done and what we're gonna be talking about today. Okay, this project that I'm gonna be talking to you about, or at least that the project that we're going to get some information from was funded by the European Commission under a specific call on estimating the cost on research misconduct. And the overall goal of the project was to produce an arithmetic estimate of the cost of research misconduct. The University of Crete, as a partner to this project, dealt with let's say, the foundational work on definitional and regulatory framework. Then we looked at we came up with a quantitative account of the extent and the characteristics of the phenomenon as it appears in peer-reviewed journals. Let's say that we did a bibliometric study on on research misconduct and research integrity. Then the third part was to do discourse analysis on the content of selected scholarly work. So we selected several articles and we analyzed them. We conducted expert interviews with senior researchers and a focus group with junior scientists, a survey research, and finally we studied specific case studies from the view of research misconduct. Our partners developed the visibility occurrence ratio and all the arithmetic estimate of the cost of research misconduct. The phenomenon of research misconduct is not unknown to the literature. As a matter of fact, we identified the earlier article published was an article of 1914 in Southern Medical Journal, and it was actually an editorial. So that was a very interesting finding. Since then, though, it doesn't seem that there was much interest in the phenomenon, although sometime in the 70s we started focusing more and more on the phenomenon. There were several instances of research misconduct that attracted attention, and publication on the phenomenon, as well as interest on the phenomenon, very, very specific and focused interest, started, say, late 90s, and of course during the 2000s, the decade of the 2000s. Then we had not only a tremendous increase in the publication, but we also had numerous research projects funded within the European Commission. Just a few remarks on the definition and the context, both of research misconduct and our work in our presentation today here. It's an established fact that we have various varying and diverging given definitions of what research misconduct is and what research integrity is, for that matter. There's an agreement that there is a harmful impact of research misconduct, and that we have to position research misconduct in the context science and research is performed. In other words, it has to be positions within scientists' everyday professional life. So actually, our question is, what does science say and write about this phenomenon? The first, say, official definition we have, well, we have more definitions of that, but one of the first definitions that attracted attention, and let's say it has become a mainstream definition, was Ory's definition of 1989 that set the well-known FFP, fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. In that definition, we also set that research misconduct does not include honest error or differences of opinion. In 2011, the European Science Foundation, in collaboration with ALEA, they provided, let's say, the European version of research integrity. And there, the ESF focuses more on the principles of what constitutes research integrity rather than what constitutes research misconduct. So here are the honesty in communication, reliability in performing research, objectivity, impartiality, openness, duty of care, which is a very significant element of research integrity, and it was very significant also among our junior or early career researchers. Fairness in references and credit, and responsibility for future scientists and researchers. Here's where we established the responsibility of the senior researchers in training the new generation. In 2017, ALEA, the All European Academics, published the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity. This is the revised version. It's a revised edition. They revised the 2011 code by NSF. ALEA here tries the European Code of Conduct here, combines the two previous perspectives, continues to emphasize on integrity, so it provides the principles, gives good research practices, examples of good research practices, and in the various environments, settings that research misconduct and research integrity should be better attained. And at the end, the third axis there is the violations of research integrity. It replicates Ory's definition on fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, but also includes what they call other unaccepted practices, or what you can find in the literature as questionable research practices. In terms of the theory, how are samples, different samples we had, because as I said, we had experts, we had representatives of finding organizations, researchers, seniors, juniors, and all that. In the senior researchers and experts in our sample, they seem to be more familiar with the FFP definition. But they seem also to be more concerned with new forms of questionable research practices. For example, how is the environment within the laboratory? What are the fairness, the content of fairness in dealing with researchers, data, society, and all that? They did emphasize the multiple roles and tasks of seniors and connected that to potential misconduct. They did talk, some of them said that research misconduct is a matter of bad apples. They're just few bad apples. But some also question that this discussing bad apples, this exceptional scientist, the exception of scientists who does not behave in morally, ethically, might be a sign of lenience to the whole scientific community. Senior researchers and experts were very critical of the quantification of science in the scientific production. The junior and early career researchers, they identified more actions, behaviors as research misconduct. They talked about plagiarism, appropriation of work, stealing of data. They were really not fond of salami publication, gift and honorary authorship. All of our samples, everybody in our sample who were junior, early career researchers, they had at least one case of gift and honorary authorship to report. They talked about insufficient supervision and lack of mentorship as a source of research misconduct, and sometimes they identified that as a research misconduct instance. Publication research bias, cutting corners, and conducting fast science. It was very interesting that all of our junior researchers, they argued that they defined precarious working conditions the way they worked in precarious situations as a research misconduct issue. On the other hand, in our survey, when we were asked people to rank the severity of research misconduct instances, you see that the first one in the rank is damage others' work, interfering with other people's work, and fabrication of data. Then after that, we have obstruction of investigations for research misconduct, falsification, compromising the rigor of studies design, and using other person's ideas without giving proper credit, that is plagiarism. So although we do have the mainstream definition, they're not the only ones. Plus, plagiarism is 11th. We have included it here because we just wanted to show its position since Ori is giving so much attention to it. So it's 11th. There were other cases that were perceived as more severe. How often this happened? Research misconduct situations, selectively reporting, selective publication, inappropriate peer review. We will come to this again. Inadequate monitoring, cutting corners, authorship misuse, gift and all that, and plagiarism. What they have done themselves, they say they have done inadequate monitoring, hurrying science, inadequate record keeping, using funded, misappropriation of funding, authorship misuse, and overlooking, 7th is overlooking others' use of flawed data on or method. At the bottom of this ranking, we found falsification, conflict of interest, and fabrication. People say they don't do these things, those bad things. When we were trying to start to do our theoretical conceptualization, we used De Vries' paper on normal misbehavior, and let's focus on this one excerpt on how they say that what people do research misconduct is normal misbehavior, is a behavior that happens during the people's everyday practices. Similar is Martinson and all who claim that certain features of the working environment may have unexpected and potentially detrimental effects on the ethical dimension of work. So on the one hand, we look at research misconduct as work, something that occurs during scientists' everyday work, and something that is related to the working environment. A typology of misconduct, causes, and effect. We were based on Davis and Sovakol, and we adjusted their typology to our own typology on individual purity, institutional failure, structural crisis, and cultural differences. We have not done specific analysis on cultural differences, although there's a lot of indication that we should all go ahead and look at cultural differences in understanding research misconduct and research integrity. From this typology that we had in mind, we went in to conduct our own classification categories, and we looked at individual, organizational, and structural elements of research misconduct, and then the narrative on research misconduct, and second step on harm. As a summary for these three different categories, the individual structures, it's just this bad apple argument. There are bad people, bad scientists, scientists who do not do ethically sound research among scientists as it is everywhere else. In relation to organization and institutional, we use Martinson and all argument on the features of the working environment that have potentially detrimental effect on the ethical dimensions of a scientist's work. So here, some of the themes there are the institutional conflict of interest, institutional reputation, monitoring, and other mechanisms. However, the narrative and the category that was mostly identified as having being most significant for science is the frame on structural themes and variations. The summary of this is that research no longer matches its image, and because of the way science now and the scientific enterprise is organized and structured, science does not produce what has been promising. So there we have productivity issues, exploitation issues, competition, scientific values, and principle and society and science and society relationships. Let's just see now few elements of the harm of research. So with this context, we're arguing that science, research misconduct has harmful impacts. And we're going to see where is this harm identified. Individual dimensions of harms, the articles that we analyzed and what we find from our content analysis is corroborated with evidence from our other methods of research. In the individual dimensions of harm, we have this narrative on individual impurity. Again, the bad apples. So what do scientists say about that? What authors say about the harm, the individual dimensions of harm, that research misconduct harms research participants and research collaborators. They talked about, for example, the Wakefield case and the impact it had on immunization. They talked about risks of treatment based on fraudulent studies and false knowledge. In those articles that dealt basically with biomedical research. They linked this harm from fraudulent studies, not only to harm on individual participants, but also to the public image of science. They always did that. We were pleasantly surprised to see discussions about the harm in scientific fields that we were not expecting it to be so obvious. We had articles on image management and manipulation and the impact it had on visual social research, potential harm to participants' privacy, for example, if you are not doing research that is based on the principles of research integrity and good science. We also came across articles that discussed the potential impact on persons' well-being from computer engineering projects and even publications. Needless to say that if someone violates the principles of research misconduct, then the co-authors are, of course, harmed. And many articles discuss the impact that these practices of research misconduct has on the lives of PhD students who are basing, for example, their dissertations and their whole future on research misconduct in data collection and data reporting. The consequences to the perpetrators of harm, authors did not spend much time discussing that, but they discussed career, personal life, and well-being. Now, when we looked at the organizational and institutional dimensions of harm, the narrative of institutional failure, then the discussions centered around harms sustained by the institution and organization. That was one theme. They talked about tarnished institutional reputation. They were concerned about the inherent conflict of interest from the relationship between academia, research, and industry, receiving funding from industry, for example. They said that this is an inherent conflict of interest and can lead potentially to research misconduct. Many authors discussed institutional responsibility, and in this context, they discussed the tension from the organizational responsibility to protect deviant researchers, victims, and whistleblowers. The concern there is that you have in the same institution, in the same organization, in adjoined offices, for example, you have somebody who's misbehaving, somebody who's a victim of their misbehavior, and somebody who is blowing the whistle on that. Direct and indirect costs of investigation of allegations and cases, policies and procedures for preventing and punishing research misconduct. Those were issues that were discussed as harming institutions because they have to deal with research misconduct. In this context, in this narrative, much attention was placed on the importance of the work environment and the senior researchers. Anderson et al. Discussed about the normative dissonance, in which very often that's a result of unethical practices in laboratories. One of the articles that we really enjoyed reading was discussing the problems that the potential of research misconduct when decontextualized principles were purportedly globally applicable, and those would be those from life sciences, deontology, are applied in other scientific fields, and those can create confusion. Lack of seniors' commitment to integrity and counter-normative behavior was a theme that was very frequently identified and widely discussed as a major concern for cause and effect of research misconduct. one of our junior researchers, the early career researchers, who is conducting integrity courses, integrity trainings. This person was saying that every time you teach that course, the students say, I like what you say, but first of all, can you please also tell my supervisor? Because what they claim there is that they go back to the working place and nothing has been. So younger students, younger researchers have more training in research integrity, are more aware of instances of research misconduct, but the environment in which they have to work, the supervisors are not necessarily sharing the same view. So in the same narrative, also there was a lot of discussion, or let's say it was almost a conclusion that there's an institutional failure to prevent research misconduct and promote research integrity. So many of the authors argued that external controls have to come in. So funding agencies should be able to audit and review research projects that they fund. There was an author that says that research misconduct has to be penalized like other criminal behavior. And at least one of the authors argues that the persistence of science self-regulation is harmful to science and is harmful to institutions. In the structural dimensions of harm, the narrative of the structural crisis, this was the predominant discourse, and the theme was that research misconduct harms science as a whole. There's harmful impact on trust in science and trust within the scientific enterprise. So this harm was then addressed in two more specific themes. Public trust in science and that's missing some here. In the issue of public trust in science and of science-society relationships, many authors related the publish or perish approach as a cause of research misconduct, as a harmful impact on research integrity. They warned about dependencies and industry for funding, the scientific exceptionalism, the claims to self-regulation that decrease accountability, and they indicate, according to many of the authors, systemic flaws of science. And systemic flaws of science diminish confidence, trustworthiness, and all that, and generate a systemic harm. At least one of the authors explicitly said, others implied, that scientists have the status of authorities of knowledge, at least from the general public, the society, and that status generates a moral obligation of scientists to society. So that is why they say it's so important to maintain public trust in science. A large discussion, large debate was of the impact that research misconduct has on trust within science and among scientists. Otherwise, we can say it another way, that these discussions revealed the failed promise of the peer review. Peer review is a very essential tenet in science. And but however, when we have biases that are associated with their main players of the peer review, then we have a significant blow on trust among scientists. Specific cases where publication citation bias, redundant publications, deliberate delays, selective review, and all these instances of research misconduct within the workings of the peer review system are characterized as indicative, or actually systematic flaws of science, and an indication of a structural crisis. Now, similar are the results we have from surveys, and they said the impact of research misconduct. First impact is reliability of science, public trust in science, public confidence in research, academia's reputation, researchers' trust in one another. So when we asked our survey participants to identify the main impact, the main sources of negative impact of research misconduct, that's what they come up with. It was interesting from among the junior, the early career researchers, when we were discussing the impact of research misconduct in science, they made the claim that research misconduct is detrimental for science, and it's linked to the fast science. So if you want excellent researchers, you have to give them time. It takes time. The element of time is very significant because in all of our element, even in all the other narratives we have on research, it's this intensification of science that causes many of the problems that are considered as science or causes of research misconduct. So younger scientists argued for slow down science. That was their argument. Thus, I'm just using this as, and actually it's the last point I'm making, as a more disturbing of all of the findings. When we asked people on our survey what would they do if they were faced with research misconduct instances, they basically wouldn't do anything. Or they would do something, but not go ahead and pursue that rigorously. There are some people, of course, that say they will do it, but a lot of people, they would do nothing about it. They would just let it go, especially if it has to do with an investigator. Okay, just to sum it up, words of wisdom, research misconduct is a deviant behavior to which scientists engage in the course of their occupation while they do science. It's nothing exceptional. It's something they do when they go to work. It's linked with many organizational and institutional epistemological characteristics of the scientific enterprise. It impacts individual lives, institutions, and organizations, and science as such. It is taught, tolerated, and even fostered by conditions of high competition, profit-oriented, and quantifiable productivity of research and science. And thank you very much for your attention. I was almost in time.
Super. Thanks very much, Professor Petousi. I'm sorry, no, but my internet just dropped there for the last minute. So I just didn't hear what you said, but you were finished anyway.
The last
I'm not looking for you to repeat. I'm just more making sure now that I'm not talking over you. You are finished because mine just dropped out.
Yes, I am finished.
Sorry. I'm very sorry now. It's just whatever happened on my side here with the internet. Look, thanks very much for that summary of the work. I get the sense for even listening to you that you could talk about this for ages, that you said it at the start, that it's a topic that you're very interested in and you feel passionate about, and even just kind of seeing you go through the various slides, it was just at a nice conversational pace that as it is clearly something that you have an interest in. A couple of things that came to my mind, actually, yeah, I was just about to say there, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat would be great. And it's just nice to get, so I see just the feedback there from one person there in the chat. But just one thing that was interesting that it was towards your end, either your second last slide or your third last slide, of where researchers are saying, look, that they need time. I think often a line that we'd have, and something I'd mentioned to the research students that we'd have in the Fostering Research Integrity module, is that it takes time to do good research, like good research practices to put them into play takes time. Cutting corners doesn't take time, but cutting corners is obviously where we have questionable research practices, unacceptable research practices, or research misconduct. So it was just interesting, it was, I suppose, reassuring to a certain extent to kind of hear something that we were saying here to our researchers in MTU is something that you found in your own research finding there as well. Two questions then. That was more of an observation than anything else, but maybe just two questions, and maybe while others are getting ready to pop something into the chat. You mentioned there about lack of senior commitment when it comes to kind of getting behind research integrity.
I don't know if it's me or you, but I can't.
There,
you're breaking up, or I cannot hear you.
I actually think it's me, Vasiliki.
Oh, okay. So,
here, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Sorry, I can actually see the white bar dropping down here, so sorry about that. Now that's obviously quite frustrating. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, very well.
Okay, sorry. So my question was just about one of your comments that you made earlier about there being a lack of senior commitment when it comes to kind of getting behind integrity. And I suppose, do you have any kind of thoughts on maybe how to maybe overcome that?
That was a very significant, I mean, that was a point of discussion with many of the senior researchers and the junior researchers also, because it's a major concern. One of the suggestions is the usual suggestion: train, and sensitize senior researchers in research ethics, research integrity issues. They have to admit that they have to learn. They think they know things. The other thing, again, is they need to commit to to decrease their workload. I don't know, maybe delegate some stuff to some other researchers. It's a very significant concern, because if the senior researchers do not commit to research integrity, whatever they do, well, there's a lot of things that junior researchers can do, that's for sure, but it makes life more problematic for everybody. And the first thing we do is, as I said, to train. Now, institutions can step in here and maybe demand proof from senior researchers, or maybe put some checks and balances on senior researchers' integrity. I think this is I don't have data for this, but it's my observation, it's my personal observation for serving in different ethics committees. When we first established ethics committees, in Greece particularly, there was, as in many other countries, much resistance. Why do I need to do that? I'm an experienced researcher. I know what I'm doing. I have been doing that for centuries. You're not going to tell me how to do my work. Little by little, though, and because it was mandatory that the senior researcher applies for ethics approval, no one else from the research group can apply for ethics approval. Even the ones who were very resistant, they realized that they were missing some stuff. So it takes a personal and an institutional effort combined to get senior researchers to commit to more research integrity. I don't mean that all of them do. I don't mean to say that senior researchers do not commit to research integrity in general, right? I see that there's some resistance there.
And I think that brings in nicely the question there in the chat. So do you consider competition a major driver of bad practice?
Oh, yeah. And it's not that I consider competition as a major driver. Junior researchers, senior researchers, survey participants, all the literature that we analyzed, it's unanimous. If we have so much fierce competition, of course people would cut corners. If some of the junior researchers, it was a bit scary to talk with junior researchers. We had a person who was working simultaneously in 9 different projects. He had contracts with 9 different projects. Many of these projects were from the same university, the same senior researcher. What that means is that this person was trying to compete to get more and more money, more and more funding. We found the change in the saying publish or perish has now become get funded or starve or something. Is a funding on famine, something like that. If you don't get funding, and funding is competitive, if you don't get published and publication is competitive, you don't get promoted. You don't get hired. So yes, you'll do a lot of things that may not be 100% ethical to accomplish your goal. And then see, this part is not associated with any individual elements. It's not a bad apple that does that. Is institutionally imposed on people, and that comes from a structural flaw. Science has now become very commercialized, commercial in market oriented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of speaks there towards the end what you said there about kind of the research culture, and to change the research culture, that's not just going to happen overnight. That's obviously going to be years in the making. And I suppose just it was another point that I thought when you mentioned the publish or perish, because obviously that's a quote that we'd hear a lot of, is there is movement around recognizing other forms of research assessment, core error being something that has getting a lot of attention. But again, that's going to take time. I mean, I don't even know would 5 years be enough to actually see the proper shift in that. No. That's going to take a long time to recognize, to move away from the quantitative metrics, to move away from the publish or perish.
And there's also, I'll venture to say that we have different speeds of science in different countries, different scientific fields and stuff like that. In my university, which is a multidisciplinary university, you see, for example, the publication speed and rate of the medicine and the heart scientists, for example, right? They publish a lot. We cannot publish, we the social scientists. There's no way we can publish a paper in a week. Our review system, our review process is much slower than it is in other fields and all that. Think about other elements as well. Think, for example, of open access journals. And the emphasis that plays on speedy review processes. We'll get your result, we get your reply in 7 days. Fine. Okay, this is good. I'll know what happens in my paper in 7 days. But given that all the reviewers, what are the reviewers? Researchers, academics, those are the reviewers, right? The experts on the field. They have a lot of things to do other than review my paper. So my paper comes over and above this. Here's another speedy process. As for the quantification of publications, and I was saying different countries and different stages of scientific progress and all that. In the countries that we're still striving to become so good in research, so well known and all that, gain a reputation. A lot of our academic requirements try to follow the steps that, I don't know, France or in the United Kingdom, I don't know, other countries, the United States, steps that followed in previous years. And now they come back and say, well, wait a minute, this is not working that way. Let's discuss this again. We're still trying to get to the publisher pairs, quantify our publications, while others are discussing maybe we should change the criteria. So there are different, is it gears or speeds in different countries? So the overall project's not going to change easily.
Yeah, no, it is different at how things are looked at across jurisdictions. Just one thought that came to my mind, related and not related, but just when you said about speedy review and kind of having a 1 week review, and this is more for FYI for others in the room. Obviously, when you come across journals that may be offering a speedy review like that, it is a certain extent a red flag that journal could be some way predatory. And it's just more of an FYI for colleagues that are in the room here. We actually did a webinar last year on how to identify predatory journals, and just that point about a quick turnaround was one of those. And I popped the link into the chat to our research integrity webpage, because if you go onto that webpage, you'll see, and if you scroll down, there will be a video around identifying predatory journals, and that would have been led by our digital scholarship librarian, Sinead Hanran. And it was a real useful guideline to identifying predatory journals. So it's related, obviously, to this overall topic of research integrity, without doubt. And it's just when you mentioned a speedy review, that popped into my mind, and I felt it was important to share with everyone else in the room, because predatory journals we do avoid it. It's actually called out in the updated European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity 2023 version, about if engaging with predatory journals is an unacceptable research practice. So it's obviously it's just something very important to be avoiding. Look, thanks very much, Professor Petousi, for that. If there's no more questions, I think we could maybe call this to a close. I find it very interesting. Personally, I could stay chatting, but I think we should try to keep the time as best as possible. And look, as always, I think when I suppose you said you thanked us at the start for the invitation. I think, look, and we very much thank you for accepting the invitation. And ultimately, when these invitations are sent out, it's creating a certain workload on yourself. So thanks very much, because I know for you to actually show up for today and to kind of have the slides ready and everything like that's a time commitment on already a busy work schedule. So thanks very much for the time that you have put into creating these slides. And just being here with us today and sharing your experience. Thanks very much, Professor Petousi.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you.
Super. And look, that brings a close to our first of this guest speaker series. Next week we have Dr. Oscar McGregor from the University of Skövde, who's going to speak to us on how the work that he's looked at or worked on in terms of skewed incentive structures in academia, how they engender unethical behaviors. So hopefully somebody may join us for that as well. But for now, thanks very much, everyone in the room here for supporting this event, and for Professor Vasiliki Petousi for actually leading it out. Thank you very much. All the best, everyone.
Thank you.